It recording in progress. All right, my next guest, my most favorite person. Oh, let me go ahead and
Mhm.
restart.
There, you said it.
There we go. My most favorite guest of all time, out of all three podcasts. This is my number three. You are absolutely. I've known you the longest. Let me introduce everybody to Bonny Moore. Bonny Moore, formerly Bonnie McCoy. This is my sister. It's my great pleasure and honor to have her here with me. Thanks for joining me.
Of course, Ken. I'm happy to be here.
I could tell. I appreciate
I'm
that.
honored.
You're
I
awesome.
even got dressed today, so
I really
you know,
appreciate it. You,
yeah.
you didn't have to wear the oversized earrings for me, but appreciate it.
They're giving me feminine vibes, though.
You are a very accomplished. Um, well, what would you introduce yourself as?
What I honestly see myself as now is an advocate for women wellness, an advocate to help women find the best version of themselves that they can be. Um, it's been a long journey for me, and whatever I can share to help women in their career, in life, in just even their own self-worth, I can help them with that. And I think just sharing my story, even though it's very personal, I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to make myself vulnerable to help people. I will say what I'm going to talk about today is my own story. I'm not going to tell you where I worked. I'm not going to tell you exactly what I do, but I will tell you that I do work in law enforcement, and it's been a long journey. And I also own a cycling studio, and we also have yoga and some strength training. And we've recently introduced breath work on a monthly basis.
Awesome. So, introducing you a little bit, you are my sister, my older sister. We grew up, we were five kids. Our dad's a pastor, was a pastor. Great family, a little bit different. We were homeschooled. Both of you and I started working at a very young age. We both worked at the same place, A&W restaurant. I was like 14 years old. I think
I love that.
you were 16. Yeah. And then you were crushing it there. But you, since I can remember, have always worked in these really, besides A&W, these kind of hardcore men-driven environments, and somehow you've always succeeded. You've always seemed to rise to higher and higher levels within whatever organization you're in. And what do you think your strengths for? How have you accomplished that? Do you think?
A lot of determination and hard knocks. So you mentioned a little bit, you mentioned that we were homeschooled, five kids. I will never regret the way we grew up. It's who I am. It helped shape me. It wasn't easy, but I've learned so much in life. Growing up in the church, there's a lot of, how am I going to put it? Makes women feel like they are not able to do the things that men can do.
Hmm.
I do believe we are two completely separate, not species, but we are different, men and
Genders.
women.
Genders is the
Gender,
word.
but we're different. We are
Yeah.
so different. There is a huge difference in gender, but I always felt women are told to be on the back burner,
Hmm.
quiet, not quiet. And it wasn't from my dad, it's just the culture, I
Hmm.
think, of the church. And when I was younger, I had to wear skirts. And I I wanted to be like the other kids. I wanted to wear pants. I wanted to go to school. I I was always feeling a little bit I wasn't smart enough, and I had to work a lot harder to keep up and maybe prove that I could do it too. I got my GED. I think I was barely 17 when I got my GED. And yeah, I was in the workforce at a young age.
So you
So,
worked at A&W and then you went over to the plywood mill. Were you 18 years old when you started that job?
yeah, yeah.
That's
So
crazy.
as you mentioned, there was like 5 kids. I share a room with my sisters. And at 18, I was like, I want my own space. I went and got a little studio apartment and I started slinging plywood at the plywood mill. And I stayed there for probably close to 5 years, I think. My first experience over there, I had a short little foreman who he didn't like me for some reason, and he actually tried to fire me and got brave, and I went back and said, "Nah, you are not gonna fire me. You're bullying me." And they hired me back.
Nice.
So
You got back in with all the boys, all the blue collar fellas over on the coast of Oregon. And I'm sure they had some of them were probably a little difficult to deal with. That was in the early 2000s or late 90s, early 2000s.
90.
Lots changed. Not everything's not perfect yet, but lots changed since then. So you left there and went to work in another mill. What kind of environment was that?
An important part of my story is that I got married too.
Uh-huh.
I got married at 19, and both him and I worked in the mills. And then he wanted to go to school, and so we moved. And he was working hard too. He was going to school full time and working full time. Um, I always felt like I had to stay in the production industry because that's where I could rely on a good check to
Mhm.
come in, and I never wanted to need anything or want anything. And so I just worked really hard in a environment that was just really unsatisfying.
Yeah.
Mentally, it was very unsatisfying mentally, but it paid the bills well, and so I stayed in it.
And it was school of hard knocks there, I would imagine.
You didn't call in sick, you had 3 days and a year of that you could call in, like 1 or 2 weeks vacation, and if you were late, you were sweating your job. So,
Yeah.
it really taught me be on time.
So, from my perspective, I knew you to be this young woman go getter, smoking tons of cigarettes. And I don't think you ever worked out that I knew of. Maybe you did. One day, I don't know what happened, but I joined the military and I was moving all over the place and we didn't stay in close contact. But all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, Bonnie's running a 5K, a half marathon, a marathon. And then all of a sudden you're just into this fitness, blowing me out of the water. I couldn't believe some of the stuff that you were doing and are still doing. But how did you go from were you when did you start the whole fitness aspect of your life? Because that's a big part of your life now.
I have an addictive personality, and I was smoking a lot of cigarettes, but I was getting that fitness aspect because I was moving plywood, and I had OCD. I couldn't go to bed if I didn't see, like, vacuum marks in the rain. It would just drive me insane, and so I'd get up and vacuum and then go out and have another cigarette and then come back in and clean the baseboards. It was pretty obsessive. It was like 2007 when I decided to quit smoking, and I had tried so many times to quit, like from 19 years old all the way to 27, and I would go a day or 2, and then I would be like, "It's a special occasion, I can have a cigarette," and so I would go buy a single cigarette, I smoke it, and then pretty soon I would go buy, like, a pack and say, "Oh, I'm just gonna have 1," and then pretty soon I throw in the towel and was just smoking again. It wasn't until I just decided I can never, ever smoke a cigarette again. And at the time, I didn't realize it, and this is gonna maybe tie in later. I had to just go through it the hard way to get through it. You could try the gun, you could try the patch, but that's just pushing those feelings down still, and you're just gonna keep craving. I quit. And I remember my heart rate would go up really high every time I drove past the gas station and on to work, and I was like, "God, I did just have this lump in my throat." And I had to tell people, "Just don't talk to me. I'm just gonna sit in here with this lump in my throat until it goes away." And when I was at home, when I started having that intense craving, I would jump on my treadmill and just start running till it cake, and
Wow.
a band cake. And then our brother Nolan died, and I kept running to deal with a lot of that.
You quit smoking before he passed away,
Yeah.
and yeah, since we brought it up, our brother Nolan was killed in a car accident in October 1st of 2007. The worst day of everybody's life in our family, and it definitely changed our family. But me and you, and I think everybody in our family knows that he went on to he's in a better place and he's not gone. But we got that to
Yeah.
lean on. Yeah, that was quite the to do. So you quit smoking before that?
Yeah. And so I started to run to deal with pain. And I was like, I'm going to run a marathon in his honor. I'd never done a 5K. I'd never done a 10K. I've never done a half marathon. And I was like, I'm going to go big. And so I remember in my head, I was like, I'm going to do this. This is something that is insanely impossible for me.
Mm.
I've been a smoker. I never played sports. I didn't think I had any athletic ability. I had friends who would run and stuff like that, and I would just be like, "Oh, I can't do that." So I remember the first time I ran 7 miles, and at mile 5, I was walking, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've been telling people I'm going to do this, and I can't even run 7 miles. How am I gonna do 26 miles?" The amazing thing that I learned is your body is so intelligent.
Mhm.
It will adjust and change and grow, and before you knew it, I was running 16 miles for my long runs. Then my last long run, I ran up to 21, 22 miles. And then I ran my first marathon in 2010, October 2010, Portland Marathon.
Wow. So it took you about 3 years to do your first marathon.
I gave myself about 9 months to train for it. And during that time, like when Nolan passed, it made me really realize that we have one life to live. And I was not happy in the field I was in. And so I had always had an interest in law enforcement, like a crazy interest. I like watch all the shows. And so I decided to jump ship, and I started in law enforcement in 2010 as well.
And you're still working in that field, so we're not gonna really touch on it because it's a
Yeah.
sensitive subject, but you are doing a very good job. You have climbed the ladder and extremely proud of where you started and where you are now is incredible, and you continue to impress me and I think everybody else around. It's not something we're really gonna touch on too much, but I would say that dealing with some of the things you have had to deal with in your career in law enforcement. You've dealt with some bad people, and being a woman in that environment, I would imagine you got to have your head on your shoulders. Can you touch on it at all?
When you talk about the things that you deal with as a woman in law enforcement, the sad thing is most of it is from your fellow staff.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part. I believe of being a female working in law enforcement. You may not have expected to hear that, some of you out there, but there's some really great people that we work with, and there's some really challenges. I started in law enforcement. I was an officer. And at the time, some of the guys, when I started, they're like, hey, we don't have any women on our SWAT team. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. I'm like, I'm doing marathons. I'm in really good shape. I'm lifting weights. I'm doing all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. So my first year there, here's the funny thing. We didn't grow up with Gen in the house.
No.
And so I learned what the process was for getting hired on SWAT at the time. I could talk about it now. It's changed a little bit, but at the time, in the tryout process was really hard. It had to do with a physical agility test, firearms proficiency test, and the interview process. And then also there was team reviews. Yeah.
What was the process
Well,
like that? How did you get selected? You had an oral board, and
well,
do you think you got picked because you were a woman, or do you think you got picked because you kicked ass, or both?
there had been quite a few women who had tried out and they couldn't successfully complete it. I also went out and bought a gun and learned how to shoot. And so I would go to the shooting range. I joined the shooting range and I'd go there on Saturdays and just shoot. As far as the PT test, to get over that wall, I could not figure out how to get over it. I would run, I would try and pull myself, I would try and swing my leg, and I was just beating myself up, literally trying to get over that wall. Uh, and finally, one of the SWAT guys walks in, and because I had a couple SWAT guys just really trying to help me get over the wall. And finally, the guy walks over, gets punches down low, jumps up, and hooks his arm on the fence and then kicks his leg and rolled himself over. And I'm like, I walk over there, I jump, I hook my arm, swing my leg, and I flip myself over. We were like celebrating because
Yeah.
I tried so hard. For me, I did not want to be given a spot on the team because I was a female. I wanted to earn it. And during tryouts, I actually got a third out of 20 men for the physical agility test. I did pass the shooting and I scored #1 on the interview and through peer reviews I got on the team. I started with probably 7 other people. And I will say the day, it was like the weekend before we were supposed to go to SWAT basic. The only guy who had been supportive of me really, well, there was a couple, but he was the only recruit going through that had been really supportive of me and made me feel comfortable. He took his life that like the weekend before we were all supposed to go to SWAT basic.
Oh my God.
And yeah, it really affected me. My first 2 years, we had, just at the place I worked, we had 3 suicides. And so at that time, it just put a resolve in me that made me just want to fight for people in law enforcement, for their wellness, to make it a better place. Like, it made me very passionate about wellness. And one of the things I was told when I started is we all die in our 50s, basically, from health issues. You're going to get divorced. And I laughed at them at the time and was like, I will never get divorced. You don't know me. I have values. I'm happily married, those kinds of things. And they're like, it'll change you. I'm like, not going to change me. And yeah, and I did get divorced. But I'm so passionate about the wellness. And we could talk a little bit about that a little bit later, but I would say one of the problems that I dealt with is I put up with a lot that I shouldn't have because I didn't want to be the girl who was going to make the complaint.
Mhm.
I was trying to be one of the fellas. I was trying, they call me sister, and oh, they're my brothers. But I was really mistreated by a couple of them verbally. And it was horrible. Before my graduation, I was standing there, and one of the guys who had been giving me a hard time, he told me, "Oh, look at her. She looks so effing stupid. She always looks effing stupid."
Wow.
And I would just stand there and wait for somebody to say something, and everybody just would put their head down and leave it. And I remember leaving graduation thinking, I don't even want to be on their team anymore. I want to quit. I'm not proud. I'm not happy about this. And then I'm like, but I'm not quitting because that's what they want me to do. And
Yeah.
so I continued to,
For 14 years.
to just work harder and harder. And that's when I was like, it goes back to my marathons. I remember standing at the starting line. It was probably my third or fourth marathon. And I was like, I'm not afraid of this anymore. This is not challenging me. I want to be a little bit nervous before I do something. That means it's worth it. And so I didn't even know how to swim at the time. And I said, I'm going to do an Ironman. And I signed up
How
for
did
the
you even
Ironman
hear?
before I even,
How did you even hear about
I saw it on
Ironman?
TV.
Wow. I never heard about it
I
until
was
you're like, I'm doing Ironman and I'm look it up. I'm like, holy crap. Like, it's impressive. For those of you who don't know what an Ironman is, can you give a little brief description of what an Ironman actually is?
It's 140 miles total. It's a 2.4-mile open water swim, 112-mile bike ride, and then a 26.2-mile run. But there are cutoff times. So you have to be out of the water at a certain time. You have to be off the bike at a certain time. And then you have 16 hours to complete it.
Wow. That's and I think I was there for your first race and I was blown away seeing these people accomplish this huge monumental task. Very impressive. And there was people from all walks of life. It made me feel like a real piece of shit. Hex.
I gotta say, it's for me, I was like, I never thought I could quit smoking. I thought I was like out of the realm. And when I finally did it, it gave me this confidence to do other things that I thought I could never do. So I did my first marathon and I'm not, if I say I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. And so I signed up not knowing how to swim and I did it. And so those are things I never thought I would be capable of
So,
doing.
so looking back on it now, do you think the power of manifestation or putting your mind to something and saying, I'm going to do this, you actually can bring those things to reality?
100%. And it's actually just clicking here. I believe in that. I believe
Yep.
in prayer, manifestation, believing. Yeah, 100%. I could tell you being out on that bike, being out on my feet, I spent a lot of time with myself too. It's all time with myself, just growing and learning. And yeah,
Good.
Nolan
So,
passing and stuff just made me like it clicked. I gotta say, I did have a lot of anger toward God at the
sure.
time, but it gave me a rage to want to live my life and be brave. Be brave. Do what you are afraid of.
Yeah, I would say
Why are you afraid? Are you gonna fail?
yeah, his passing definitely affected me the same way. I made some serious changes, not initially when he passed, but when I turned 30, when I turned his age, I said, holy crap, like you don't know when your time is up and you better make those changes. You need to make yourself happy and be a better person, and because it flies by. And literally last night, I've been doing this podcast, but I've been thinking about this podcast since I was a little kid. I always wanted to be on the radio. I always had a karaoke machine, wanted to talk into the microphone. And our dad, I don't think genetics is a real thing. And he was on the radio, and I always loved that and admired that. But last night I was thinking about, oh, I finally pulled the trigger on this stupid thing, and I'm just going to do it, whatever happens. But I was laying in bed last night at about 3 in the morning or 2:30 in the morning after editing till 12:30. And it hit me. You're going to die someday. You better freaking do what you want to do, because time's a
Mhm.
ticking.
100%.
Time's a ticking, and if you're just sitting around just waiting, it's gonna get better. I'm gonna change eventually. You better freaking do it. You better do it now, because you don't know. The shit changes like that. I got to watch you do that Ironman, and it was very impressive and super proud of you. And then after you completed that, kind of what was where did you go from there? What was your next goal? Were you just gonna keep training to do something else, or
My first Ironman was in 2015 or 2013, and I was struggling. So I would go out on my bike, I would go out and run, and that was like my therapy and where I did a lot of my deep thinking. And so I'm just gonna say it. And I met my husband, Richard, and he was a fellow SWAT guy, and we were both married at the time. But I would say during this time, it was the hardest thing in the world for me, not getting divorced, but not only because we hurt a lot of people, but yeah. And so after that, and I moved over here with nothing, it was like I was 18 again, sleeping on an air mattress, going into credit card debt because I was used to having pottery barn everything and
sure.
being bored with life and say, I think I'll buy that because I can afford it. At the time, I could afford whatever I wanted. And so I was over here and I had two bonus kids, and I was 37 years old when I moved over there, and I did not have kids. And I was surprised what it's like.
Yeah, from my perspective, I had marriage troubles and I had my own issues, but I always looked at Bonnie, oh, that's the relationship I want. If that's the money I want. She does have Pottery Barn and Lululemon. And so it was crazy to watch you go from that life to all of a sudden wait, what's happening? I'm sleeping on an air mattress, living in somebody's house. And you were struggling, man.
It was not easy for us either. That people thought we just ran off and it was like, oh, we're blissfully in love. Life is great. It's, oh my gosh, what did we do? We are two stubborn mofos, very in love, like
Yeah.
in love, but we're both very stubborn. We're like, we are making this work. It's going to work.
Yeah.
But walking in and seeing the look on Jacob and Natalie's face when they first saw me, it was so heartbreaking. And it was so hard to keep a smile on my face and just be the really fun, nice new girlfriend who's here. It was really hard. I did not feel, obviously, they have their mom. I've never wanted to take her place, but we're family and I do have a role with them, but just trying to figure out how to do that and not disrespect their mom any more than I already had. And I had a hard time doing certain things for them because I was like, "God, that's their mom's job. I can't do that." I didn't realize it, but I think I was almost withholding love because I didn't feel worthy maybe to give it to them. And this is
Mhm.
all after the fact that things that I've learned all along this journey, but it was really hard. So anyway, and then walking in over here into the office of the law enforcement, Richard's ex's uh, dad worked there, brother worked there, and uncle worked there.
Wow.
And they had a lot of friends. And here I come walking in, and it was like I had the A on my forehead, and it's to this girl. My pants are getting tight because I stopped training like I was, and I don't have the money to buy new pants. And they think they're treating me like I'm wearing tight pants to show off, but I can't afford them. And it was hard. And then they put us on opposite shifts, and which was heartbreaking because you would think that place would care a little bit more about family relations, but and they do. I'm just venting. This is my story to vent about. But, but yeah, no, it was hard. It was really hard.
Coming into that environment, like with all of those different family members, did you interact with them and how did they treat you?
Actually, they all treated me very well. They were very nice. Her dad actually came up and introduced himself and shook his hand. Occasionally, he would give me a cookie, and I was like,
Wow. Yeah.
"This
Poison.
is- I like this. Okay, what'd you do with this cookie?"
Yeah. Man.
I have to say, I am so blessed because they're my bonus kids. I'll never call them step kids. They're my kids. I just started getting comfortable saying that, although I still respect the model. I'm Bonnie.
100%.
The kids have been nothing but kind to me, loving to me. They want to be with me. And I'm like, I never felt worthy of that. And they love me. And I'm very lucky. I have a decent relationship with, we don't hang out, but they co-parent and I'm here to assist.
What is your
Yeah.
other business and how did that begin?
So yeah, coming back to living over here I'm not gonna say
Yeah,
where,
yeah,
but
yeah.
they have these things
The
called
middle of
goat
nowhere.
heads. They have these things called goat heads. It's near Boise, all right?
Yeah.
They're like these alien weeds that will literally pop your tires on bikes, and there's nothing here. There is a few restaurants. It's a small area in the middle of nowhere, but there I've been teaching cycling and yoga and strength training since I quit smoking, actually. That was when I really started enjoying instructing and things like that. I live on the Oregon Idaho border, and COVID hit. And so living in Idaho, I got to live with that regular thing.
The
And then
freedom loving people.
freedom, sure. And then
Yeah,
you have Oregon there, and it's just everything is totally different.
yeah.
And I found this little spin studio down there, and I had volunteered my time to teach with them. And so I would do that for a while, and one person would show up to class, and I'd be like, let's go. Anyway, COVID ended up running them out of business.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was pretty heartbroken, and I was like, uh, would you sell your bikes? And she said, I have 7 left. I can sell those to you. And so I went to a lady over here. There was a CrossFit gym, and I knew there was a small room upstairs. And I was like, hey, would you let me teach some classes upstairs? I'll rent the space from you. And then I started Be More Cycling. And it started as just a little spin studio, and then we kept filling up, and so it's, "Okay, I'll buy another bike," and then they would fill up again, and I'd buy another bike, and it's still a small studio, but now we have 12 bikes.
All right. You're on the come up. And you guys have moved to a little bigger studio now.
Yes, we did. We moved to a bigger studio. and it's awesome. We had strength training, yoga, breath work. Like I said, we even have a little resale, high upscale resale for your like Lululemon and Sweaty Betty and all that stuff. You can, instead of just giving it away, you can maybe make a little money.
There you go.
So, yeah.
Right on. Got any entertaining stories for me?
I
Getting to
can
that?
tell you, I've had a very transformational year.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we'll talk about maybe on a part two.
Let's talk more about our childhood. We got all kinds of funny stories from that.
I
Like,
I think mom and dad will be watching this.
they probably will. I hope they are. Yes, we were looking at the answer key, and at least I was, and I still can't pass a math class to save my life. But
Why would
that's
you have your phone? You have AI. You don't need it.
exactly. You're not going to have a calculator in your pocket all the time, Bonnie. That's what they used to
No,
tell us.
absolutely.
Yeah, you'll have a wizard in your pocket. You can answer any
You don't
question
have to
the
go
universe
anywhere.
has to throw at you. No,
He,
I don't.
yeah,
I don't.
there he is.
Oh
Dan,
yeah, there he is. Yeah. Well, grab him out of there.
there he's
Jeez,
back in the water.
this is not a show about torture, Bonnie. I don't want to torture a fly on my podcast.
Oh,
We're gonna
he's
have
still swimming.
PETA coming after us.
No, I'm just gonna leave him right there. Maybe
Enjoy your podcast while he dies.
I'm going to. He can swim.
How do you think he's doing it? Sink or swim? Speaking of sinking and swimming, I guess you've swam. So I did want to, I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you a little bit about your child birth situation. Cause to me, that was a crazy story. You were pregnant,
Oh,
37 years old, kind of a geriatric,
39.
oh,
I
geriatric
was
mom.
39.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, my wife was
Yeah.
also a geriatric pregnancy. So I don't know why they call it that. That's what they call it. But
Yeah.
yeah, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know pregnancy is a huge deal for a lot of women. A lot of women have a lot of
Yeah.
complication and some scary shit. We went through a lot of issues with some pregnancies. You're pregnant for the first time and you're going to have a
Yeah.
baby. And was that intentional? You guys planned that?
Oh, yeah. But it's like in my 20s, I wanted to have kids. I would be like, can we please have kids? Can we please have kids? And it would, a lot of times it was just, wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right time. And then I started getting into marathons and I got my new career and I started to actually enjoy life. And so at that time, I was like, I don't want kids. I don't want that problem. I'm just going to I'm having fun. I can bike. I would swim 2 hours in the morning. Then I would jump on my bike and ride 40 miles. And then I would go to work from 4 to midnight.
Wow.
But I loved it. I loved my life. I was like, on the weekend, I could go out and ride 100 miles. I'd put my little backpack on and by myself a lot of times and just think.
Just think and
Just
ride.
think. So then, fast forward 2015, I got 2 kids every single weekend. And I'm like, what happened? You want to go for a bike ride? Oh, and you want to go do this? Oh, we can't afford it. It was what it was. So I remember going on a run and I was really struggling. I remember this one run in particular and I stopped at the top of the mountain and I could see city and the valley and everything. And I just prayed because at this point I was at a pretty low spot in my life. I lost a lot of friends. We lost a lot of friends. I felt isolated from my family a little bit and I had nobody over here. I had no friends. I was in a foreign place to me besides potatoes and onions and a lot of commercialized food.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, well, if I'm going to have kids every weekend, I might as well have one. And so I just prayed about it. And then I was really nervous and I came home and I said, hey, I know you got 2 kids, but I think I want to have a kid. He's okay. And I was like, huh? And
That
he
was
was
it?
like, okay, if you want a kid, you can have a kid. And I was like, not used to that in my life. It was
Yeah.
always, we got to save this. We got to do that. I don't feel comfortable with this yet. Maybe later, blah, 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 blah. It was always something. And then it became my something. I was pretty nervous and we did wait till we got married. And probably 2 months later, can I talk about
Oh, 100%.
Jandy?
Yeah, yeah.
Can I say
Yeah,
her
for
name?
sure. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. No telling
Yeah.
anybody.
So I remember she had just found out she was pregnant. And you guys had been trying for quite some time, I believe.
Yeah, 5 years.
And, yeah, I was really excited for her. And then I went snowboarding with one of my friends, and I hadn't gone snowboarding in probably 10 years. And I was like, man, I'm like, this elevation's kicking my ass. And I get home and I take a nap and I get up and my friend sit next to me. Can you guys I'm just pissed off, like, I feel like I got in a car accident, get away from me, and I called Jandy, and I was talking to her, and she goes, "Take a pregnancy test." "Really?" And she's, "Yeah." So I take it, and I find out that I'm pregnant too,
Wow.
and we were both just stoked, but I was really nervous because I was 39 years
Yeah.
old, and I didn't even think I could a kid. I didn't know if it was possible. And so I was nervous. And I remember I was just like, make it to 12 weeks. If you make it to 12 weeks, you're good. You're
Mm.
all good. And I remember it was getting close. And Jandy found out that she lost hers. And I remember how hard that was. And I had a hard time I can't imagine how she felt just
Yeah.
seeing somebody else continue on with that pregnancy, being in the stages that she would have been in after my 12 weeks. I thought, man, and then Jandy had lost her baby. She had been a little bit ahead of me, and I felt like I was home free. And I was at work, and I went in the bathroom and I was bleeding big time. And I was
Mm.
like, oh my gosh. But in my mind, I thought this could be a miscarriage, but I don't think so. I just was thinking that. I don't know why. I should have left work and I didn't feel like I
Wow.
could. But then I went to the doctor after and they told me that the lining in my uterus was starting to separate. And so I was really nervous. But it hit 14 weeks, and occasionally I'd be bleeding and just not scared. I was scared, and I was thinking, I don't, I could never connect with being pregnant because it was so hard thinking I might lose her at any minute. And it doesn't help that law enforcement does not get your pants that work. I'm wearing my duty belt with my belly sticking out. I was a sergeant at the time. And then it got a little bit, it got bad. And I went in at 16 weeks and the doctor was like really stern and just matter of fact, pretty much, and sympathetic, and just told me, I don't know if your baby's gonna make it. They saw signs of preeclampsia coming, and they told me to stop working out. Like my blood pressure was going up really high, and my heart rate is like in the 40s. Like I'm
Wow.
super, well, super healthy. Anyway, I asked her, I said, is she gonna make it? And she just looked at me and she's, I don't know. By then I had that Melly and I just start crying. And she's like, at 21 weeks, the baby's viable, basically. And
Mm.
we'll give you some steroids so that if you have the baby, the lungs will develop sooner. So I'm crying and we leave. I came home and Richard's parents asked to come over. they came over and I just sat there crying. His dad asked if he could pray for me. And I said, yeah. He came over and they all put their hands on me and they prayed for me. And I was still crying and I was just feeling like I was going to lose KK. And I went to bed. We went to bed that night and I woke up and Richard was like, it's going to be okay. And I go, what? He goes, trust me. And I said, why? He said, I had a dream that angels came and they stitched up your wound and you're going to be okay. And I believed him.
Well, I definitely believe him now. I'll talk about my belief in angels on another podcast probably, but wow.
Hey, I want to be in on that one too. In it.
For sure.
And then 21 weeks hit. I got that shot with the steroids, and then it was week 30. And then it was week 32. And then it was opening day of hunting. And Richard said, I'm going to go hunting, or can I go hunting? I'm like, absolutely. I got 5 more weeks to go. Just go, have fun. And that was October 10th. And that morning he's gone and I go and I sit down and I like tinkle. I'm like, I don't think I went to the bathroom, but I don't know. I think I'll roll into work. So I go to work and I get to do my thing. And then I go back in, sit down, tinkle. I call the doctor. So I call, you need to get up here. So I'm driving to Boise and Richard tried to call me. He knew I was at work. And so he's going to leave a message. Oh no, it was an automatic reply. I'm driving right now, whatever. And he's like, why is she driving?
She's supposed to be at work.
And it calls me and I'm like, it's just another thing that they want to go check on me again because I was high risk. And so I was going in almost weekly. And so anyway, I go up there and they're like, yep, you're having the baby. And wow. What? They're like, you got a pinhole leak. You're having the baby. And I'm like, oh crap. I'm trying to call Richard. Can't get a hold of him. He got to a location where he hit service and his phone just went bing, bing, bing,
Oh,
bing, bing, bing.
man.
And so then he had to run with his cat like 5 miles. And he was trying to hitch a ride into town and nobody would take him into town.
Would you pick him up?
He was able to take his friend's truck and
Wow.
he made it. And then he came at 35 weeks and she had to spend a couple weeks in the NICU. But yeah, he was my miracle. I prayed for her and she really helped me feel like I had a family again. She blended us together.
Mhm.
And her and Nat they're sisters and they're the best of friends. Yeah, I'm so blessed. She saved my life. She really did. I was going through such a hard time and I still had a lot of work to do, but yeah, she saved me. And it was really hard having a little tiny baby and working from 10 at night and having to pick my kid up at 10:30 at night and put her in bed
Oh, my.
late night and dropping her off on daycare on her first birthday. It was devastating to me. And then me and Richard being on opposite shifts, it was a really dark time for me. I was
I mean,
so blessed to have her, though. I never knew life could be like that.
it definitely changes you. And she's how old now?
7.
7 years old. So you've been doing the school thing for a little while now. Do you get to participate in any of the school activities, and how is it being? So my son just started. He's 5 years old, and I'm 44. So I'm the geriatric dad taking his kid to kindergarten. But luckily, I think my generation's pulling it together, and we're having more kids for some reason. I think we're looking around, going, "Shit, somebody needs to step in and help." Straighten things out.
You know what? Over here, all the moms are really young.
Well, I can imagine.
I'm going to be 46 this year, and I'm
Yeah.
a first grader. I remember my mom's 50th birthday, we were in a limo drinking.
Dad's 40th birthday, we lived in Greenville, and it was like, man, he's so old. I hope he's going to be all right. And I'm like older than him now. I was like 13 or 14 then. So they were way ahead of us.
If you think about it, no, we didn't have a lot of money, but we always had healthy food.
Oh, for
Like
sure. Cause we grew it
like,
because we couldn't afford to buy it.
yeah,
No,
I
it's
mean,
amazing, honestly.
we had healthy food, a clean house, clean clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
Important. No, I can remember our friends coming over, like kids across the street, they would get McDonald's or whatever, and I'd be so jealous of them, but they would wanna come over and eat our food because it was real
Yeah,
food, and I was like,
yeah,
"Man, I will trade you." I got hooked on some junk food for a while because of our lack of
yeah,
junk food, but, yeah, those kids, they all wanted to come over and eat our healthy food, and I was like, "Man,
yeah.
we eat this stuff every day, it's awful."
The
I love it
pizza.
now. "Oh, yeah, buddy."
Yeah, me too. Me too, but yeah, the world is freaking changing, that's for sure. I was thinking about it today, I turned on the TV and there was cartoons on and I know it's Saturday, but like kids can turn on cartoons at any time. We used
Yeah.
to get up at 5 in the morning sitting there watching the fuzz, just
Yeah.
waiting for something to come on.
Yep. Yeah, over the rabbit ears, and they came
Yeah.
on for a couple hours in the morning on Saturday morning, and that was all the cartoons you got for the week. Our kids' generation, it'll be different. They're gonna have a lot of different struggles, and things are gonna be so much different for them. I think if you give them the foundation that we're trying to give our kids, I think they'll be fine. It's all about parenting.
It's changing, that's for sure. Not a lot of Gen Xers,
No,
for sure.
but I think we've touched on pretty much everything we're going to touch on today. I appreciate you taking the time to come on my podcast and help me try to grow this thing a little bit. I know we're all over the place. So I'm going to do a little bit of snipping here and there and try to piece this thing together and provide some good information to people watching. And I really do appreciate your time. Do you have anything last words of encouragement or anything for women out there who are in a tough environment like you were in, you pursued and accomplished so much.
I would say the piece of advice that I would give is, and this is just what I would tell my daughters, you are here for a reason. Everybody has a gift. And a lot of people let their guilt, their worries, the I can't in their mind, it buries that light that they're supposed to be shining and that they're supposed to be brave and they're supposed to be celebrating. People don't feel like a lot of people don't feel worthy of
Yeah,
being happy.
yeah,
It could that's something that I've dealt with, not feeling worthy of being happy, carrying around all these things. I've had some real challenging and transformational year, and I can tell you I've been able to let that go, and I get a little criticism for it, but, uh, hey, it is who I am. I'm tired of covering up who I am, and I'm gonna shine, and I'm gonna spread love, and I'm gonna be brave, and I'm gonna preach it.
all right, Bonnie Moore, keep shining and spreading love. I appreciate you. We'll talk soon. All
All
right.
right.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks.